Good morning. You're listening to Retake Our Democracy, a weekly 30-minute radio show that airs at 8:30 a.m. every Saturday morning on KSFR 101.1 FM, your Santa Fe public radio station. And I'm Paul Gibson, the host of Retake Our Democracy. Today, I'll be speaking with Mariel Nanasi, Director and Lead Attorney for New Energy Economy. And the focus of the discussion will be on one of the hottest topics circulating in New Mexico these days, and that's the proposed Avangrid-Iberdrola merger with PNM. You'll want to stay tuned, as no one is more on top of this issue than Mariel. But before we get to Mariel, a few brief announcements. For the last 4 shows, I've been focusing on the book Less is More by Jason Hickel. Then this past Tuesday, we facilitated a book club conversation with 23 folks. Unfortunately, only 3 had completed the reading of the book, but others had a good grasp of what a zero growth economy is. And so the conversation was really quite rich. In fact, it was so rich that everyone attending has agreed to finish the book, as they want to do a part 2 discussion in July. Less is More is an absolute must read. Not only is the information in it important, but Hickel has a way with words. At 280 pages, it can easily be finished in a weekend. So I'd really encourage all of our listeners to pick up a copy at Collected Works or any local bookstore, not Amazon. And we'll announce a date for a book club part 2 very soon, but it'll be in mid to late July. So you got lots of time to read it and be part of this conversation. The Retake website is also hosting a page that includes links to an array of articles on topics related to Hickel's theories. So you can test the waters before getting the book, and just go to retakeourdemocracy.org, click on the Rethink in the menu bar, and you will find links to a page that with articles on the subject, as well as links to the 4 video talks I gave on the book. And by the time you get there and this show is on the air, there will also be a meeting date for the book club in July. I also want you to understand that after you hear this conversation, you're very much going to want to be part of a Zoominar that we're hosting on July 8th at 6 o'clock with some of the folks from Maine who have direct experience with Avangrid. And their direct experience is so horrible that they are have introduced legislation to create a public utility in Maine and buy out Avangrid. So that will be on July 8th at 6 p.m. and you can register for that at retakeourdemocracy.org. So as is always the case, I like to remind our listeners that we are recording the show on Tewa land. It's stolen land, and we want to thank the Tewa people for their tremendous stewardship over the centuries. And if we want to have some more centuries for humankind, we're going to have to follow their lead rather than lead them around by the nose. Today, we're going to be talking with Mariel, and we're going to get to that right away. But I want to remind you that if you're driving around and you only hear part of the show, you can go to retakeourdemocracy.org, click on the Actions and Events page, and you can watch the entire show. So that's that. Let's talk to Mariel. It's been almost 2 months since we've had you on the show. So much has happened since then. So welcome.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Yeah. Oh, good remembering that it's good morning, because we're recording this in the afternoon. I'm guessing that our listeners know you by now because you've been on the show many times. But how about a 2-minute intro or a 1-minute intro on who you are, what is New Energy Economy, and why do you do what you do?
Again, thank you for having me, Paul. I really appreciate you and Retake Our Democracy. I have been a civil rights lawyer for most of my professional career, though that's actually the balance is changing. And now I've been a utility lawyer for about a decade or so, and a little bit more. And I represent New Energy Economy. We have thousands of members who participate, and we are really about transforming our electric generation from dependence on coal and nuclear, which we still today have more than 70% of our P&Ms, particularly, energy comes from coal and nuclear, and to renewables to address the climate challenge that we are all facing. But we want to do it in an equitable way so that people of color and frontline communities are protected, and that ratepayers are protected, and that this is not just a basically a corporate bailout. So that's one of the issues, that social justice is primary.
Okay. Well, we're not going to today talk too much about the local choice energy. In fact, we're not going to talk about it at all, or public power, but we'll probably have you back on the show to talk about that real soon. Today, it's going to be all about Avangrid. Last time we spoke, we only devoted about one question to Avangrid, and that was primarily because we didn't know that much just yet. This was 2 months ago. We know a lot more now. So can you just start off by telling us, what is the merger about? I mean, we don't have to go into what's wrong with it or why we oppose it, but just like technically what is happening and in terms of this merger.
So people know that PNM is an electric monopoly. There's about 500,000 customers, a little bit more than that. And as I said before, they are very into fossil fuels. We still today only have about 10% of renewables in the system. So there's a call by New Mexicans and by both in terms of people and also in terms of officials that recognize climate and the need to transition as quickly as possible. And so there's a company, it's called Avangrid, and they are owned by a parent company called Iberdrola. And Iberdrola is a Spanish-owned company, Spanish and Spain company. It's also owned in part by the Wealth Fund of Qatar. And they said, hey, we want to merge with you. We want to own you, PNM. And so they had to apply to merge. And they say that what they can bring is the renewable energy transition that we so desperately need. So they've applied to the PRC, and there's about 23 interveners. Those are different parties, everybody from the New Mexico Attorney General to the city of Albuquerque to the county of Bernalillo, and New Energy Economy is also involved in that case. And that's how I know what I know about it.
Okay, so part of Iberdrola's pitch to New Mexico is that PNM is too small to invest the necessary resources to really make a just transition, to build power lines and generation and transmission capacity, and that Iberdrola can and would. And so they're just like what we've been waiting for. The greenest company on earth, the most ethical company on earth. If you've been watching the TV ads during the evening news, you know how great they are. What am I missing from this picture?
So, I was, and I have been, and people know New Energy Economy for opposing PNM for a really long time, because they're so heavily invested in coal and nuclear particularly, but gas as well. And as I said before, we only have 10% renewable energy in the portfolio. So I was also pretty excited, like, wow, a renewable energy company that has money, maybe we should welcome them into New Mexico. But when you sort of look under the hood, you realize really what kind of company they are. And so what I first want to tell you is that they have done this. They have merged many times before. And one of the companies that they took over was a company called Central Maine Power. And Central Maine Power is very similar in a lot of ways to PNM. They have about 200,000 more customers than we do, but they didn't really come. And I now believe that Avangrid and Iberdrola, they're not coming in to sort of just own PNM and run this little public, run this utility. What they're really trying to do is, sort of plant their flag in our ground and take advantage of the other economic opportunities, as they say. And that is to sell energy to Arizona and California. People know that California is, like, I think, the 4th largest economy in the world. So there's a lot of electricity that's being consumed there. And Iberdrola wants to have another market there. The other place that they want to expand their market to is Mexico. So both to the west and to the south, Iberdrola wants to come in, and yeah, they'll run PNM, but really what they're after is the economic opportunity growth that they see. And this is exactly what happened in little old Central Maine Power, where they went in and they said, "Oh, we're gonna give you renewables, and we're gonna, we're a big business and we have so much money and we can get cheaper financing." Same stuff they're saying here, and we'll run Central Maine Power. But what happened is that Iberdrola hooked up with this company called Hydroelectric Quebec. And they decided, hey, where's the load center there? Well, it's in Massachusetts. So what they want to do is sell hydroelectric power from Quebec through Maine to the load center in Massachusetts, and is using their position in Maine, their ownership of Central Maine Power, to do that. And in the process, their plan is to decimate a pristine forest and some of the best trout fishing in the world. And also there's lots of wildlife. I mean, the pictures are absolutely gorgeous where they want to put this transmission line. And basically, learning from their experience in Central Maine Power, I've become extraordinarily opposed to Avangrid and Iberdrola coming into PNM territory or to New Mexico, and them essentially bulldozing New Mexico for their private profit.
So, you use the term plant their flag, and I'm guessing you didn't do that accidentally, but it sounds very much like they also want to extract our resources. And that sounds a lot like colonization. So the Spanish did it once before via Mexico, and this is the return of the conquistadors.
Yep.
But I'm told that Maine is so upset with the performance of Central Power that they have launched a legislative initiative to create their own public power. Can you tell us a little bit about how that transpired?
Well, we're not going to spend the whole time talking about all the horrific atrocities that have happened in the last 5 years in Central Maine Power, but I'll give you a couple of highlights. They are now the top utility in the country for forced outage rates. That means they get more brownouts and more blackouts than any other utility in the entire country. So that means it's not reliable. Well, what's the very first thing we want from a utility? We want them to, when we go turn on the lights, we want the lights to turn on. So that's number one. So they're worst in reliability. Number two, they have gone from, I don't know exactly where they used to be 5 years ago, but they are now have the 10th highest residential rates in the entire country. And the top, or among the top couple, for a utility its size. We just proffered testimony from the head of the House of Representatives, the Utility and Technology Committee in Maine, he has his 7th term there. And he talked about all the problems with Central Maine Power, including the highest forced outage rates, including the high residential rates. But then he talked about three other very important things. One, I just mentioned about this transmission line. And Maine, Mainers, that's what they call them, were trying to oppose this transmission line. And they had citizen petition gatherers getting signatories on a petition to oppose the transmission line. Avangrid there hired private detectives to follow citizens around from trying to exercise their rights. There currently is an injunction, that means like a legal halt on the transmission line brought by people opposing the transmission, but it has been an extraordinary lift. And the thing is that the people are so upset about what this transmission line is going to do, not benefit the people of Maine, but benefit the foreign corporation, which is what they're all about. And then the other thing that was just horrific and lasted for years was that Central Maine Power via Avangrid initiated a new billing system. And I saw some of those bills. And one woman who lives in a mobile home, she had, the month before, she had $130 electric bill, which is high. The next month, she had a bill for $13,600. And she went and she complained and she was so nervous and freaked out. And she said, I live on a fixed income and I can't, this can't be. I don't use $13,000 worth of electricity, which, just so your listeners know, that's like a small industrial park, or business using $13,000 worth of electricity. And they said, oh, why don't you just turn off the lights more? And they blamed the customers. And over 100,000 people either didn't get bills or got bills that were 50% higher or more. And it was a disaster. And the public regulatory agency there fined Avangrid the highest fine that they could possibly levy, which was $10 million for this billing fiasco that lasted 2 years, and that the company treated the individuals and the ratepayers terribly when they complained about either not getting a bill or getting a bill that was just too high and completely unrealistic.
So I'm not understanding, Mariel. Let me ask you, why are we opposed?
Yeah. And there's like two other really important things that I need to tell you, which is
that you're going to have to wait.
Okay.
Because I need to remind our listeners that they're listening to KSFR, and that KSFR is Northern New Mexico's public radio station. It's a media gem. And they just completed a month of fund drive, and they came up a little short. And so I'd really like to encourage all of our listeners to go to ksfr.org, click on the donate button, and give them 10, 20, 50 bucks. View it as your ticket for admission to Retake Our Democracy, to Democracy Now!, to all kinds of great music and cultural discussions. It's a great thing. ksfr.org, click on donate, and tell them Paul sent you. And Mariel, you have two more things to tell us that are terrible about Avangrid in Maine.
Yeah, one of them, which I thanks also for promoting KSFR, and I'm going to donate. So thank you for saying that. The other thing is, so one of the things that I think is close to the heart of people who are listening is the love of rooftop solar, and now hopefully now we've passed community solar. And so there's a thriving solar industry in New Mexico. Over 2,000 people are employed in that industry. Avangrid is currently being investigated in Maine for undermining community solar and rooftop solar. So they want it all. They don't want to just, sell to Massachusetts and have this transmission line and not have clean energy there. They want to put out the mom and pop businesses in the solar industry. So because they really want want to own it all. And I think your your analogies to colonization, I refer to this as energy colonization 2.0. The last thing is that Avangrid, this includes Maine, but is not exclusive to Maine, has paid in the last couple of years $60 million in fines for all sorts of violations, including 2 days ago, the Federal Regulatory Commission just issued another fine against Avangrid for $360,000 for non-compliance with regulatory agencies. So why do we want them here is the question. I think that the idea is, oh, they're going to solve our climate problem, but I don't think they're going to solve New Mexico's climate problem. They might want to sell clean energy, mostly, I think mostly wind. But I'm afraid, because if you look at what Iberdrola has done internationally, they have more than double 50% of their portfolio is gas, and about 20% of their portfolio is nuclear. And so they're not the clean energy company that they want us to believe. So I'm pretty concerned, especially about their reliance on gas and fracked gas.
And we're going to talk a little bit more about their international performance, because, but you had said that they go around trying to undermine local solar companies. In Spain, they've done the same thing. They've joined with 7 other major utility companies and have basically forced the legislature there to pass laws that have effectively squashed the local solar industry. And again, it's because they want it all. So what I want to understand now, Mariel, is people like you and the interveners have already started submitting briefs and so forth to the PRC. What happens next? Is that there's going to be a hearing, an opportunity for public comment? How does that unfold?
So some parties have stipulated with Avangrid and Iberdrola and PNM. Stipulated is just another word for settled with them and said, all right, you can come in. And they've gotten a couple of goodies. There are some benefits. New Energy Economy's position, as well as the greatest number of cities and counties that are involved in this case, are opposed. And they're opposed for a number of reasons. But that will all be, but some of them include the reliability problems that Avangrid is steeped in all over the country. But it's not only that. And so the hearing will take place on August 11th, but on August 9th, there's an opportunity for public comment. And both New Energy Economy and Retake Our Democracy will have on our websites a way to access public comment. It's going to be, you get 3 minutes, and it'd be great if you have your testimony written down, or if you know it really well, just to speak it. But being prepared is important. And the hearing examiner will listen to all the public's testimony. And it's really important that people speak out on this, because what happens in this case will impact us, have an enduring impact on us for decades to come. So it's really important that you speak out. And then after the hearing examiner will write a recommended decision, and then that will be presented to the commission. And then the commission will make the ultimate decision whether to approve the recommended decision, modify the recommended decision, or reject the recommended decision.
Okay. Well, so I just to underscore, that the vast majority of Iberdrola's portfolio is in the global South and in the UK. And I wrote a blog based on a report done by the Institute for International Cooperation and Development Studies. And I'd recommend our listeners go and listen to that, read that report at the blog that we did. And I'll put a link in our next blog to it, because it's absolutely shocking what they've done in South and Central America. They've been kicked out of Bolivia, but in Guatemala, they're just decimating the country, and it's something we have to prevent. We don't need to be colonized here in New Mexico. So I just wanted to interject that. So can you tell us a little bit about your briefs and what your objections are? You've given us enough, really, but how is that going?
Well, there's one thing that I'd like to share with you that I think is a linchpin issue in the case. So we know about the bad reliability and bad customer service in other places. We know about the high rates. We know about them basically bulldozing different places to get what they want and not really benefiting the place that they are. So that's sort of their track record. But here in the merger agreement itself, it curiously calls for something called Four Corners Power Plant divestiture. And that means that Avangrid and Iberdrola said to PNM, we can't buy you unless you get out of coal completely. And so in a shotgun marriage, PNM went out to try to sell its shares of Four Corners Power Plant, which is a coal plant that's next to their flagship coal plant, San Juan Generating Station. It's just literally 9 kilometers away. And the Four Corners Power Plant, PNM invested in, and this hearing examiner, the same one, found that PNM's reinvestment and life extension of that plant was imprudent. What does imprudent mean? It means that the business invested irresponsibly. And our Supreme Court, in a case we won 5-0 in the New Mexico Supreme Court, held that when a utility imprudently invests in a plant, ratepayers should be held harmless, meaning we don't have to pay for their irresponsible business decisions. Thank you very much. That's the law now in New Mexico. And PNM imprudently, it was found by this hearing examiner, imprudently invested in Four Corners. But now PNM is trying to sell its Four Corners share to another entity and turn around and demand $300 million from us for that quote unquote abandonment, which abandonment does not mean closure. It means, it just means it's not going to be in what's called rate base. It means it's not going to serve us, but they're going to sell it. And so we think that that's an illegal sale. First of all, the ETA prohibits the sale of fossil fuel. That's number one. But more importantly, PNM had agreed to have what's called a prudence review hearing and to determine and allow the PRC to determine cost disallowances. But they want to skip out on their prior commitment and they want to get $300 million. And that is the number one thing that we are opposed to. That's included.
And we're about out of time. And so I want to let our listeners know that you have not heard the last of this. Mark on your calendars, July 8th, 6 p.m. Mariel will be there, I will be there, and the people, the Mainers will be there. And they will have a lot to say that will validate exactly what you heard today. And I hope you're appalled. And stay tuned with this show and with Retake Our Democracy and New Energy Economy. We'll be sending out information about how you can offer public comment. We'll have speaking points, the whole thing. And I'm assuming this will be done by Zoom. Is that correct? Yeah.
It is.
Okay. And so, oh, good. You don't have to sit in those horribly uncomfortable seats at the PRC. But we're out of time now. I got to close. Thank you very much, Mariel. I'll see you Friday night for dinner. And we'll chomp down on some good Thai food. But that's all for today, my friends, and we'll be back in another week. But in the meantime, stay healthy, stay active. It's the only way we're going to fix this mess. Thank you very much for joining us.